Welcome back to It's Only Money here on your radio. And we are not here alone, you and me, listener. No, I'm here with the financial advisors of Edgewater Family Wealth, edgewaterfamilywealth.com. That is the website you want to go to get all the info, list of past shows, how you contact these gentlemen. These gentlemen that are here with me, that is Scott Brown of Edgewater Family Wealth and Tammy. Hello, fellas.
Hello.
How do you do? And did you know you can find us on your favorite podcast channel? Are they channels? Are they what are streams?
Streaming
services, platforms? Okay, I'll take your word for it. So anyway, we're on those things. We're on the internets.
Sweet.
So any old episode or old podcasts I've done over the years are still there for the finding.
Very, very nice. Well, I hope your week has been good. I love seeing your smiling faces and teaching the masses about their money and what to do with said money, or just think of money in a different kind of way. But first, before we talk about anything like that, there's the little thing that we got to get out of the way. Tammy, do you know what that thing is?
I don't. Tell me.
It's the numbers, baby.
Oh. Now that week starts on. Now, just to tell you, the last weekend we were doing our favorite exercise at Edgewater Family Wealth. Do we know what it is?
Jumping jacks?
Oh, on top of that,
okay.
It is
duck squats.
We can do that. We can add it to the routine.
It's not a literal exercise, I guess.
It's a brain exercise.
Those are the hardest.
Oh, those are the worst.
Yeah.
Those are worse than actual exercise.
You got to stretch out. You got the cerebellum's tight. I get it.
Yeah. I can't even pronounce that.
It's all right. What do you just speak multiple languages? No big deal.
No big deal. He could probably say that in 4 languages.
Yeah.
So our favorite exercise during the weekend in the office is to go through the federal economic data projections.
Ooh.
That's what we do every weekend. Did you know that?
Wow. What, you party animals over there.
Yeah. It's a good time, baby.
So
say that again. The federal
data economic data projections.
Federal economic data projections. Yes, we did do that.
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
I say we. I just sat in the room and listened. Tammy did all the work.
It's part of the exercise, right?
Yeah, it's part of my exercise. I did duck squats. You did that.
So those are important because every 3 months or so they come up. They tell us what the Fed is thinking and what the Fed thinks the economy is going through, the main metrics. And some of the ones that we found out doing our favorite exercise is that the Fed continues to slash the GDP growth projection for 2023.
Okay.
Which may not be good news, but it could be good news. Depends on how you look at it.
All right. Well, give me each side of that coin.
Well, the not so good is growth. There won't be much of value being produced in the economy, meaning
the economy itself will slow down.
We're slowing down.
Yeah,
we are slowing down.
Yeah.
The good news though is it's not negative.
Yeah.
So that's not a recession,
right?
Technically.
Yeah.
So it will be flat according to what they project, but they keep updating that every 3 months.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a moving target, of course. But tell us the good side of the slowing economy.
The good side is the best side, actually. Inflation is going to be eradicated.
He said eradicated. He didn't say it was going to come down. He said eradicated.
Yes. Economically
eviscerated.
That's a nice word. Nothing actually eradicates a recession. Sorry, nothing eradicates an inflation like a recession.
Yeah.
It's just basic stuff right there.
Well, I mean, the economy slows, then the need to raise rates diminishes. And if we slow the raising of rates, then Wall Street will rejoice, the markets will rejoice, the bond market will rejoice, most likely, right? So these are, so on one hand, you have the two-headed monster, right? On one side, you have an issue where if the economy slows, maybe unemployment increases a little bit.
Yes.
Companies' profits slow. That means wage increases slow, which have been moving quickly over the last year or so. That's the downside to it. If you have a 401k and the market does well, then obviously you enjoy the benefits of that. So, like with any economic thing the government has to deal with, it's complicated and it's nuanced and it's never going to be perfect. And that's what makes our capitalistic markets and or society work, is that it's not perfect. It does have fits and starts. There are going to be bad days and good days and everything in between. But on average, we get it right over the long term.
Yes. That's what we like, the long term.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, they also anticipated that on the long term, the Fed rate, which is now is 5, is going to come down rather quickly starting next year if everything goes to what?
According to plan.
Yes.
Which it never does.
Which it will never does.
But in theory,
Yes.
yes, that we could look at. So is the consensus that we will either hold or raise slightly for the rest of the year,
Mhm.
and at sometime next year we're holding or possibly expecting the Fed to decrease?
It will be based on the GDP
Mhm.
and unemployment
Yeah.
and inflation, those
Yeah.
3. However, when you look at it now, you'll see in this economic data
Mhm.
projection, they said they expect end of this year the Fed rate to be 5.1.
Mhm.
It's already 5.
Mm.
So that
So a
leaves
10
something
basis
saying.
point raise, that's what we're getting? That's what you're telling me?
Maybe. It's also a probability. We don't know.
Yeah.
As you know, it's always somewhere between 60 to 80, but you never know, that 20% might happen.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one thing I do know is that I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with that. Me and Socrates, we're on the same page there.
Yeah, you got your known knowns and your known unknowns.
Right.
People made a lot of gave him a lot of flack for that comment. I forget who that was now. Some general talking about Afghanistan, but that sentence itself makes a lot of sense. You know what you know,
Yeah.
and you not knowing what you don't know is actually even more important.
More
More
important. And the problem we have a lot of in this country is people don't know they don't know.
Oh, that's the worst.
Yeah, and they all have Facebook to tell you that they know.
But yes, that's what drives Facebook is I don't know that I don't know, so I'm going to keep telling you.
I always have an
What I
opinion
don't
about
know.
it. Yes.
Yeah, but it turns out old Elon Musk might be a genius though, because he added the blue check mark that you got to pay for, and
Mhm.
Instagram went with a paid verification system, and I believe they made like $700 million since doing that.
Thank you, Elon Musk.
Yeah, so
I'm not sure that was his intention for
No.
Instagram to make $700 million.
but he made a company that hadn't turned a profit.
Yeah.
So-
Well, we'll see how that all shakes. I mean, what he did, well, he paid $40 million for a $20 million company. So that's, or excuse me,
40 billion.
40 billion. That's a
Yeah,
B. $40 billion for a $20 billion company. So he started out a little behind the 8 ball there.
Yeah,
He's got some work to do.
Yeah.
little bit of
a lot
catching
of
up.
cover.
Yeah. But he's a smart guy. He'll figure it out.
Yes. Well, we hope. Yes.
Yeah, I
yes.
hope so.
So on that note, we saw that there's a massive rally that happened the last quarter,
Yeah.
especially in tech.
Yes. The
Um,
Amazon, I don't know if Amazon did okay, but some other tech stocks did really well.
Yes, like Apple did
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
Despite everything, but again, from the previous year, they were really lost a lot of value.
How much was
the
that? Do you
drop.
know how much Apple was up by any chance or no?
No,
Okay. But it was up like 20, 30%, if I'm not mistaken.
the entire Nasdaq was up 20 something.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, the tech stocks were destroyed last year.
Mhm.
Kind of people taking profits and saying, oh, this is a little high for me and getting out. And then everybody shied away from tech
Mhm.
and didn't want anything to do with it. Some of you sold in December. Shame on you.
Mhm.
And now here they come roaring back. So again, continuing to make my case for buy quality and call it a day. Apple, Microsoft, whatever it was. If you just held on, you would have been fine. But if you got cute and said you were a trader, I'm a
Mm.
trader. I'm not an investor. I'm gonna trade.
Yeah.
Hey,
Then you got what you deserved.
that's not the secret stuff.
And that is not the secret sauce. We've already talked about the secret sauce. That is not. Time is the secret sauce.
Agreed.
Do you have any further numbers for us?
We actually, I dig deeper a bit because I wanted to see how different sectors and industries within these sectors are doing.
Yeah.
Another favorite exercise we do at the weekend.
Yeah.
Usually. And I found out that the last 2 quarters, despite everything that happened, we saw home building industry in general
Yeah.
just appreciating in value.
Yeah. Interesting.
In some cases, they were up to 50%.
We still have a shortage of housing in this country.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the home builders. Now, rates are obviously going to play a role in that. If somebody's house payment went from $1,200 to $1,800 when they did the math because of the rate increase, that's going to slow a lot of families down, a lot of young families in particular, first-time home buyers down quite a bit. But with that said, the housing crisis still exists. We don't have enough houses. That's why rents are so high. And cost of living, part of the inflation problem is the cost of housing.
Of course.
Yeah.
Cost of housing, cost of rent. I was just talking to a buddy of mine. This is fixing to be an old man story. I was just talking to a buddy of mine. We were roommates back in our early 20s when we started in the business together. And we were talking about how our rent was $730 for a 4-bedroom place over on Cimarron.
700 each.
No, $700
4 bedroom.
for a 4-bedroom. So we're paying like $150 a piece to live in. I mean, it wasn't, a palace or anything, but it had a working sink and toilet and a kitchen and all the things you need. And we were just lamenting how bad it is for kids trying to, like, I think my daughter pays, I don't even want to tell you what she pays in Gainesville to go to UF.
Oh my God, my college apartment was $685 just for me for one room.
Yeah.
And it was an apartment, bad.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, it just made me so sad.
The roaches were free, of course.
Yeah.
They come along.
Keep tuned to It's Only Money here on your radio. While you're waiting for us to come back, check out EdgewaterFamilyWealth.com. That's where you get a hold of Scott, and we will be right back with more It's Only Money here on the radio or podcast or internet or whatever. Welcome back to It's Only Money. I'm here hanging out with financial advisors Scott Brown and Tammy from Edgewater Family Wealth. EdgewaterFamilyWealth.com is the website. I'm Ryan. And Scott, I imagine this happens a lot with lawyer friends of mine. Like, you got people always asking you for financial advice, right?
That's a thing.
And you're a man who is gone to school.
I have.
You've been working in this industry for 30 plus years.
Yep.
And you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's questionable.
But it's I bring it up like this because I got a cousin that's always coming to
Every
me.
story that's funny starts with, I got a cousin.
But they're always coming to me with like, hey Ryan, what's your what's your Monero at right now? Basically, or whatever coin of the flavor of the month it is. And before it was coins, it was like some other kind of juice or something that I should be in.
Of course.
That if I'm not in this right now, I'm missing out. The unfortunate part is my cousin, he's just a waiter.
Yeah.
And they only just let him become a waiter after he was like a busboy for like 5 years.
Yeah.
But this guy's got the financial advice that I'm supposed to be taking. And it's always like, if you give me money, I can invest that for you.
From the waiter.
Because necessarily, I don't know how, I know on my Robinhood app or whatever app I'm using, whether it's for Fidelity or whatever, I know how to hit the button for stocks. I get stocks. I don't know how to do the technical, go in and buy whatever coin get a wallet and do. I'm sure I can figure it out. I don't care. So he's like, I'll do that for you. You invest with me and then I'll get you. It's always something like that. And it's one of the most frustrating things in the world. One, because it's annoying, but two, I'm like, yo, am I missing out?
Right. So he's your crypto liaison between the appetizers and the main course.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and this is not to diminish our friends who are in the service industry, because some of them do very, very well, and all of them work very, very hard. So don't send me a nasty email. But with that understood, I would be terrible at waiting tables. I would forget the order. I would drop stuff, and it would just be horrible altogether. I probably wouldn't make it through a shift. So, you bring up a good point. Is people, one of the things I find is, especially in younger people and to a slightly lesser degree in some older people, is there are people, first of all, who clearly are not economically successful. Not that that's everything, but it's a thing if you're talking economics, right? If somebody's going to give you economic advice, then I assume economics are important to them, but there is no sign that they have reached any kind of success with their own economics, which I find more often than not, right? The person who's giving me the advice, or I'm hearing about giving advice, is not the person with the wealth, right? It's, again, I'd say the same thing every time. It's like, no offense, but if someone wants to give you workout advice and they clearly haven't picked up anything other than a beer and a cheeseburger over the last 30 years, that's probably not the person to take that advice from. So where I'm going with this is to your cousin's situation is they, first of all, they want company. They want, misery loves company, right? They want to, because if they do it, if they buy crypto or they buy a meme stock or even a regular stock, right? They go on the exchange and buy a stock. They're doing two things when they're talking to you. They're trying to reaffirm in their own mind they did a good thing. Because if you go, yeah, man, that sounds awesome. I'm totally in with my life savings. Then they're like, oh, okay, I guess I do know what I'm talking about, right? And then they get the affirmation. This is true politics, true, right? Because people are looking for one of two things when they start a political conversation. They're either looking to feel better about their existing view or to argue with you because yours isn't the same as theirs. That's the only two things they're trying to accomplish. There are no other things they can accomplish by doing that. So when you talk about investments, it's the same thing. I bought, Dogecoin because Elon talked about it, and I don't know how I feel about that. Let me talk, Ryan. You should get Dogecoin, right?
Yeah.
And then if he looks at you and he says, and you say, man, I don't think so. I don't understand that. I don't like it. I don't get it. I don't understand crypto. It might be great, but it's not for me. Then you're going to get an argument for 10 minutes as to why it's great, right? Because you didn't do what, in this case, your cousin was looking for you to do, which was reaffirm his existing position. Because if you say you don't think it makes sense, now he's angry. But he's not really angry at you. He's angry with himself. And I find with people, I have some older clients who are very successful. I mean, we're talking millions of dollars in net worth, who, let's say, one I can think of in their early 60s, they're very financially successful and have a son who is still on the payroll to some degree in his mid 20s, giving his father financial advice, which I then get to hear secondhand. Well, I was talking to Junior. You mean the kid that's on his third college in 3 years? Yes, that one. And he told me that a recession's coming and I should put all my money in crypto. Okay, let me get this straight. You're 63 years old. Your net worth is in excess of $10 million. You've done it slowly and steadily by being responsible and practical and building a business and working 80 hours a week. You've accumulated this wealth. Your son, on the other hand, is on his third college in 3 years, spends most of his time on the bar playing video games in the basement. And this is the person that you're going to take financial advice from. He is suddenly an economic guru and knows when the next recession comes, which, by the way, we have a recession every 3 or 4 or 5 years. So eventually he'll be right and he'll claim he called it, even if it's 3 years from now. But again, you have to think about who you're taking advice from. That brings me to another point, is the resources are there for you. The resources are there for especially a young person, because you have so much time on your side to accumulate wealth. You don't have to be brilliant. I'm not saying you're not brilliant, but you don't have to be to accumulate wealth, right? And I can give you bunches of examples of that. But the reality is the information is available. It's in books. There are people who, Richard Branson, Mark Cuban, Damon John, the list goes on and on. You could go on LinkedIn right now and see the posts that they put up about perseverance and discipline and about process and about compounding and about a million things. The problem is people don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that that's how they got wealth. They don't want to hear that Mark Cuban studied code for like 5 years to learn how to build what he eventually sold to become a billionaire. They don't want to hear that. They want to buy Dogecoin.
Yeah.
They want to buy Ethereum. They want to buy a meme stock, right? People don't want to hear this. And I would say, really, in every family, I feel like this might be true. In every family, there's that person, man or woman, I don't know which, that is very successful, right? It's that person, that they got money. They're thoughtful. They did it the right way and they have the money, and they're the person that all the other relatives talk about when they're not in the room, right? Oh, he probably stole that money. Who knows how he got or she got that money?
We never know how they really got the money.
We don't like those people because they appear to be more successful than us, and that's really what they've done wrong.
Yeah.
Right? So, but that person exists in might be an uncle, it might be a cousin, it might be an aunt, it might be your grandmother, it might be your grandfather, but there's somebody in your family who's done it right, and they've done it right. Right? Stop listening to the idiot cousin who wants to buy meme stocks while he's playing video games in the basement. That's not the person. Your grandmother or your aunt who ran a successful company, built it up from the ground up, worked 80 hours a week, saved and accumulated $10 million. They will tell you the secret. If you sit down with them and say, Aunt Mary, what can I have 20 minutes of your time or 30 minutes of your time? I promise you Aunt Mary will give you the time, because people like that love nothing more than to share how they got where they got, right? But they're not going to throw it in your face. They're not going to talk about it because they already know half the family hates them because they got money. You know how that dynamic works, right? So they're not going to do that. They're not going to go out of their way to show off or give you unsolicited advice. But if you ask a person like that, they will gush. If you say, "Can I take you to lunch?" Not only will they buy lunch, but they'll give you a lot of good information. And let's say you don't have that person in your family. I suspect most of you do, but if you don't, somewhere in your neighborhood is the independent insurance agent or the attorney that's very successful, or the entrepreneur who runs the plumbing company or built an electrical company, or whatever small business you admire in the neighborhood. The person who owns or runs or founded that business, I will bet you $1,000 that every single one of them will take you up on your request to just ask for advice. Because first of all, everybody likes to be asked for advice. There's not a person out there that is not flattered by, "Can you give me some advice?"
Yeah, and the number one thing people like to talk about is themselves.
Oh yeah, I do. I love. Want to talk about me?
Are you that person in your family, Scott?
Maybe to a degree. Yeah. I mean, I think there's some weird dynamics to that when you appear to be more successful in people's minds, and they don't know what that means. That might mean, you're worth 300 grand. It might mean you're worth $30 million. Some people can't really process that. And there's part of your family that's like, good for that guy. He or that gal, they worked hard. They're nice people. Sometimes the wealthy person in your family might be a jerk, and that's entirely possible.
For me, it was just like my aunt when I was a kid, because she had a pool at her house, and I was like, "How'd they get that pool?"
No, agreed. You look for signs. It isn't usually extravagant wealth. They're not typically driving. We all know the millionaire next door. On average, the most driven car is a Ford F-150, and I think second is used to be a Toyota Camry. So they're not showing off usually. Maybe they you say, "Oh, they went to Europe for 2 weeks. How could they do that?" Right? So that's the person you're looking for.
All right. And if you want to find the person you're looking for to help you become that person, that made sense. Go to EdgewaterFamilyWealth.com and get started on your financial journey. That's how you get a hold of Scott. EdgewaterFamilyWealth.com. And we'll be right back with more It's Only Money here on the radio. Welcome back to It's Only Money here on the radio. I'm here with financial advisors from Edgewater Family Wealth, Scott and Tammy. And to get a hold of these gentlemen, you go to EdgewaterFamilyWealth.com. That's the website to check that out. And Scott.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes I like to play in the third segment. This is my own personal show.
Yep.
And I get to ask all the questions of super smart financial advisors. But I recently, something happened to me recently. My father passed away. And here's the thing. You always talk about being sad and having a plan. And
Sure.
Now, when you go to retirement, I mean, like, that's not where your job stops, right? It's like you're getting people through their retirement and making sure all this kind of stuff is set up.
Yeah.
And do you do things that involve end of life, like when somebody passes? Is that something your firm offers?
Yeah. So we're very involved in that process.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's I want to hear your experiences, but it's certainly an undervalued and unappreciated part of what we do, I think, because it's a lot of work. For the firm when someone passes. Obviously, it's a sad time for the family. Sometimes it's a sad time for us because we may have known the client for 20 or 30 years. But the prep is intensive. So I'd like to hear your story and see what you went through.
Well, my story is my dad. He's 88 when he passed. He was born on a farm in Minnesota in the 1930s. So
no kidding.
Yeah. And his dad left when he was very young, and he had to basically run a farm on his own until they just couldn't anymore, you know? So he's very self-made guy, and he's always relied heavily on himself.
Yeah.
To the point where, the government took the farm. So I'm not trusting them.
Yeah. That's an element of that.
Yeah. And so when he passed, he was a realtor for most of his life, at least as long as I knew him. He had a whole life before I even got there.
Right.
But he was a realtor, had a lot of different properties, had a lot of different stuff. Died, though, no will, no real, just the investments that he had, which would be these properties throughout the country. And then now it is a nightmare.
Yeah.
Including, where is the paperwork for any of this? titles, these loans. You got to do notice to creditors. Here's a fun fact: if he had a timeshare, I know this because I found this out randomly, that I have to legally say to the court that I don't want this, or otherwise it like would automatically come to me or my brothers.
Wow.
There's just so much that comes with death that you don't realize legally. You know, like most people think, oh, they're gone. All right.
Yep.
And that's kind of how I've
Give
lived.
me their stuff.
Yeah. And I've honestly, me and my brothers, once it happened, we'll kind of look at each other like, were you taking care? Is it on you? Is this?
Yeah.
And now we're going to have to go through probate.
Yep.
Which for those of you that don't know, probate is what happens when you have to get the government involved to make it all legally divided up. And then, hey, they take a percentage, by the way. It's very fun. So I would like for you to talk a bit how important it is to have like a plan in place. Like somebody told me recently, if you don't love your family, do this.
Yeah.
If you love your family, put it in place because it is for them.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because it is my biggest fear. It is my personal biggest fear to leave a mess for my family. Being dead doesn't bother me at all. I was dead for a long time before I was alive, so I can probably do it on the other end.
That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I've been dead a lot longer than I've been alive.
Yeah.
So I'm good with dead. It's the mess I would leave behind because I'm kind of weird that way. I don't like to burden other people. And I know that's weird. I'm going to leave them things and they should be happy about it. But the reality is I cannot tell you. And the more economically successful you are, meaning you have property, maybe you have 3 or 4 rentals, maybe you have a primary residence, maybe you have a beach house, maybe you have a mountain house, maybe you have an IRA, or maybe you have a brokerage account, or maybe you have 3 brokerage accounts, or you had an old 401k, and on and on and on. I mean, we talked the other day about digital assets. Maybe you got 100,000 Amex points, and you got your Marriott points, and this and that, and it's a mess, and it doesn't have to be that way. The problem, Ryan, is nobody wants to talk about dying. You know, if you get a 65-year-old, and I'm 58, soon to be 59. I mean, for me, it doesn't bother me to talk about it. It's maybe because of what I do, but for a lot of people, it's a taboo subject. Well, Jim doesn't want to talk. The wife will say, Jim doesn't want to talk about that. Well, yeah, but he does know not talking about it isn't going to keep it from happening, right? Yeah, he gets it. Maybe next year will. No, not next year may not come. I just lost a good friend. You just lost your dad. Next year did not come for them. So my point is that there are many things you can do, like brokerage accounts, for example. A lot of people have old joint brokerage accounts. Maybe the other spouse has been dead for 3 years and that hasn't been changed. Maybe they have a brokerage account just in their name because they did change it just to their name, but they don't have a transfer upon death. At brokerage firms, they have something called a TOD, transfer upon death, which is a legal form you fill out prior to dying because it's harder to fill out when you're dead.
So difficult.
It's so hard. You fill it out prior to dying, and it basically bypasses probate. I call these probate exclusive documents. IRAs, I call probate exclusive documents, not an actual thing, but it's my word. Meaning that if you have an IRA and you name a beneficiary, Tammy has an IRA, he names his wife as the beneficiary, she gets it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Bring me a death certificate and a letter of instruction, we're good to go, right? It gets messy when you have homes, you have to retitle things, you have to file with the government, you go into probate now, you're looking 3, 4, 5 years. Problem with not leaving a will, or more importantly, a trust, is that it leads to infighting with the family. And everybody says the same thing. My kids would never. No, there's about an 80% chance they're going to fight, right? If you don't lay down the law in the form of a trust or a will or some kind of documentation, they are going to fight. It might be a little fight, and it might be a humongous 7-year probate drawn out, lawyer intensive fight. And I have literally seen estates disappear over 7 years. And guess who got the money?
No one.
The lawyers.
Yeah.
The lawyers got the money because they all got lawyers. And the lawyers ain't in no hurry because guess how they get paid? By the hour. Yeah. So the longer this takes, the better it is for them. Now, please don't send me a nasty email because you're a lawyer. It's not my
You're
point.
Making the lawyers and the waiters
I'm
very
making
angry.
Everybody
today.
very angry today. They're involved because you messed up, right? So they do deserve to be paid. All I'm saying is you're creating a situation you could get with a lawyer prior to death. And I think most probate and elder law attorneys would tell you It's much cheaper to do it on the front end than after the fact, right? And they're happy to help you with that. And I know many good lawyers. Hopefully I've redeemed myself with the lawyers. But the reality is, again, if you're not planning for it, it is going to be a mess. I get you're going to be dead and not care. But in my mind, you want to look at the TODs. You want to look at the beneficiaries on your IRA. And by the way, if the beneficiary on your IRA is 25 years old and it's your ex-wife, that's not going to sit well with the current wife when I have to explain that to her. So let's please take care of that. I would say if your net worth exceeds, I don't know the number, 300, 400, 500 grand maybe, a trust is something you should look at. And people say, I don't want to spend $1,500. Well, that $1,500 will save your family a lot of grief. You have life insurance policies. Who are the beneficiaries on those? What are the estate tax issues? I mean, the list of things is long and daunting, but it's much easier for you and your family to filter through on the front end than it is on the back end.
I was surprised to learn how long, these probate things can take. When you're saying 7 years, that's
Wow.
like, I feel like a pretty average number from what I've been reading.
Yeah, it's not uncommon. The courts are not getting any less full, my friends. I mean, we have a very, very burdened and bogged down judicial system on every level, because everybody sues everybody now. And the reality is, it could literally take you 7. It could take you 10 years. It's not impossible.
Yeah. Oof. All right. Well, it'll be so fun to work this
Yeah.
out.
I just excited Ryan. He's running out of the room to get a drink right now. But
Yeah.
it's not going to be fun. It's certainly doable.
Yeah.
And if you get the right professionals involved.
Yeah, there was a lot of legal shenanigans that I already had to do because my dad was in a assisted living facility, and we had to get Medicare for him. And to do that, you had to liquidate everything that you could down to like $2,000.
Yep.
But a lot of that involved just kind of putting stuff in like wife's names and things like that. So,
Yeah, that's lawyer stuff.
yeah. So it's it feels like an untangleable mess day 2 into this happening. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. It's that's where lawyers are helpful. I mean, that whole thing where you're trying to get into a facility, you don't want to drain every dime you have, or in this case, your dad had. The lawyers know the angles. They know what's legal and what's not legal, and you always want to do as much as you can up to the legal limits, right? Because the other part gets you in trouble. But
Yeah.
the lawyers are certainly helpful, and there are many really good ones here in town that do that for people.
Of course. But we're talking money here, not legal advice. We're talking financial advice. And the place you want to go for that is Edgewater Family Wealth. EdgewaterFamilyWealth.com is where you want to go to get a hold of these gentlemen. Plus, if you want past episodes, oh man, they're on that website and all streaming services. Just find It's Only Money, and we will be right back with more It's Only Money with Scott and Tammy. Welcome back to It's Only Money, and we are in the last segment of the show. I'm here with Tammy and Scott from Edgewater Family Wealth. Again, one last time, that website is edgewaterfamilywealth.com. And Scott, I got to tell you, thinking about, the passing of my father, and like a time feels like a little more finite now, I guess. I guess I'm at that age where the things are going to start happening like that.
Yes.
But one of the funnier things about time and money for me is that, okay, like I have a really nice computer system that I built. I built my own PC. I put it together with parts. I mean, I spared no expense on this. Like I do this for work and for a hobby at the same time. So
A
I'm
lot
like,
of duct tape and rubber bands.
yeah, and I built this thing. I put it together, and I don't want to say what I spent, but it was a pretty little penny.
Yeah.
And I'm a man who enjoys a video game every so often as well, along with all the video and audio editing and stuff I do. Now, here's the thing. I could play the best of the best video games.
Yep.
I've always wanted this in my life.
Yeah.
But now I got no time to sit down and do that. Like I look at this machine, I'm like, I'll get done with editing, and I'm like, I'm so tired. Now I got to go to bed. And it's like, and little kid me would be so angry with me that I would just like let this sit there.
Wasting that time. Yes, your video game time.
Because it just seems to be how it is. Like I'm doing okay, like financially, I got a good job, but the time isn't there to really allow for all the fun stuff in the way that I would like. But whereas as a kid, all the time in the world,
Yep.
zero money.
Yeah. That's the thing. I have a good friend who I had lunch with yesterday reminded me, and he says this a lot to me, to remind me to not, put the pedal to the metal all the time. And he says, when you're young, you got nothing but time. You ain't got no money, but you got time,
Yep.
right? So you're spending time to get money, right?
Mhm.
You're working at, in my case, bagging groceries at Publix. Well, you were at Winn-Dixie, if I'm not mistaken, at
Yep.
some point, the beef people. And, you know, you got the time, you don't have the money to do maybe the things you'd like to do. And I promise you there are plenty of people in nursing homes who would trade you some money for some time right now, right? So when you're older, you got the money if you've done things right and you've been at least a little diligent, a little thoughtful, saved a little, you probably have some money, but you don't have a lot of time. So, you know, one of the things I try to tell young people is you got time. You don't need to be in a hurry. That's the problem. You know, when you're old, you're in a hurry. I
Mhm.
mean, you know, I got clients that tell me they don't buy green bananas, right? You just I got to get the yellow ones because I don't know about tomorrow.
Yeah.
So my point in telling you this is take advantage of what you have. And if you're young, what you have is time and health, typically, right? You have
Mm.
health and you can maybe work 2 jobs. And maybe with that second job, whether it's driving an Uber or whatever it is, you can save some money. Now, I know there's some argument that young folks make, and I think appropriately so these days, about quality of life in youth, because, you know, when you do get older, there are typically health concerns that come into play that may prohibit you from doing things you want to do. But you can split, you know, there's a hybrid here. It's not all or nothing. This isn't a binary conversation. So I guess with the time that you have, you know, you're young, you're energetic, you don't fall asleep at 9:30 like I do with a book over your face. You know, you can stay up later, you can work a little bit, maybe you have a side gig. It gives you the opportunity with your time and your health to accumulate so that when you maybe have more money, you would have more money than time when you're running out of time and you say, "Hey, I'm 60 years old. That trip to Europe, I can't keep putting that off." Or I wanted to hike the Himalayas, or I wanted to go to the Grand Canyon, or you know, I don't know, I want to run with the bulls. I don't know what it is your thing is, but you know, you don't have a lot of time. So you want to provide the money to wisely use the time, right? And my buddy's point to me always is, you know, you're working a lot, you're pushing 60, you know, maybe, and don't get me wrong, my wife and I have a lot of fun, but it's, you know, I'm always like, well, I don't know if I want to do that right now because he's like, listen, you're running out of time, dude. You may
Mhm.
not know it, but you're running out. Because he's about 6 or 7 years older than me, and he's like, that little wheel keeps spinning faster and faster every year, right? So, what I'm trying to tell the young people out there is that you do have time, you do have health, and you should use it to your advantage. It's not to say you shouldn't have fun or you should work 80 hours a week like I did, because you know, there are times I think I probably shouldn't have worked that hard. I probably could have had a little more fun in my youth.
Mm.
But to young people, take advantage of your time and your health. When you're older, what I'm saying to these people, and I have this problem with my clients sometimes, is getting them to spend money, right? Is they have enough money, they have a lot of money because they were disciplined, and now but they're not changing gears for me. They're not realizing that there's more money than time now. Spend some of the money, right? You're not getting
Mhm.
more time out of the deal. So, you know, they'll say, well, you know, we're going to go to Mexico this year, but that's all we're going to do this year because, you know, we don't want to get crazy. I'm like, get crazy. You could go to 4 Mexico trips and still be fine, right? You could go to Europe. You can go to the Grand Canyon. You can go to Napa and drink all the wine you care to drink, right? Don't. I think one of the problems we have with certain mentalities is what got them there, what made them successful, made them financially or economically viable. They can't let go of it. So I have, on one hand, I have young people who have a lot of time and no money and don't want to use their time wisely. They use their time to, you know, Instagram or TikTok or look at meme stocks or crypto or silly things. And I'm not saying don't send me a nasty email. I'm not saying crypto's worthless. I don't know what it is at this point. But you know, they use their time looking for shortcuts when they could be accumulating. And then older people don't use their money when they don't have much time. So these are 2 things that I see a lot of, and I'm doing my best to correct.
Interesting. And to the young people, I would say, you're right. You only got so much time. You got time all the time. That's why if you're going to be hungover, don't call into work.
Mm-mm.
Go to work
Mhm.
hungover. Be hungover on
At
the
work.
company time
Yes.
at work. Get paid for that hangover. It's
I
very
feel like you're
important.
speaking from experience here.
Great advice. Huh?
Well, my friends would do that. They'd be like, "Oh man, I don't want to go out tonight. I'll be hung. You know, I got Saturday. I'll be hungover. Fine." I'm like, "Saturday? No, dude, do that on Monday.
Yes, Tuesday be hungover.
Yeah, you can still serve spaghetti, cousin Nicholas. It'll be fine.
I can tell you in Gainesville, Florida, that the giant paper towel boxes are great to sleep on if you're hungover. And I don't know how I know that, but I will tell you that's a thing.
Wow.
Brawny is the best to sleep on.
I used to work for an authority on sports when I was I would do holiday work for them, and they had these the shelves like where they hung all the sports equipment and stuff, and you could go into them. Like I don't think everybody knew about this, but you could go in there and like you'd be in between the shelves, and it was kind of used for storage, but not really.
Yeah,
and you could just take a nap in there
nice.
and listen to all the people
walking by.
Just a little 15-minute nap. Oh yeah, but you never
listen, young people. These are not recommendations.
These are not.
Do not do these things.
This is only Ryan. These are not the views and opinions of Edgewater Family Wealth.
That's right.
But for your clients that don't want to spend the money, which I find a very interesting phenomenon, because I imagine this happens with multiple clients.
It does.
When they pass and the money gets transferred on to kids and grandkids, that money's just going to get wasted fast, generally, right? Or does the next generation actually do a good job of holding on to the money?
Well, it's an interesting question, right? Because if the first generation acquires, the second generation kind of hangs in there, and the third generation squanders, is kind of the thinking in businesses. When it comes to wealth, if the parents have been responsible themselves and accumulated, a lot of times, not all the time, they've passed that down to their children. And oftentimes the children are already successful. This is just more money that they will manage in the same fashion that they manage their existing money with. Because, it's people are in their 50s, 40s, and 50s typically when their parents pass. Obviously not always. But we do see, especially when it's big wealth, like if you see somebody that's worth 20 or 30 million and that they maybe inherited the money or some of it, a big portion is like a third or fourth generation money. That oftentimes is a struggle because those people, I like to say inherited wealth is not a bad thing because my kids will inherit money, your kids will inherit money, but you have to prepare people for that. And most times big wealth doesn't do that very well. And these people, what I see is it creates a lot of animosity. It creates a lot of anxiety because now they got it, right? Let's say someone who's never really had to deal with money because their parents have always, given them a stipend or a trust, quote unquote. And now suddenly they have the money, the big money that's producing the income that they've been spending. Well, they don't know where that money came from. They don't know how it got there. They don't know the effort that went into it. And so I find two things with really wealthy inheritance is that those people are ill-equipped to get the money. They will spend it frivolously. What they won't spend on is help. They become instantly cheap and fee conscious for professionals who want to help them because, again, they don't understand the dynamics of the relationship and how this advisor or this accountant or this lawyer may have helped that person get to where they are, how they got the money. They don't want to continue to do a lot of times, right? They're very sensitive to those sorts of things. They're the last ones to pick up a check. Let's put it that way. So, this is not always the case, but it is hard for really wealthy people who are oftentimes very busy to instill discipline into their adult children, especially if the children have kind of been getting the benefits of that without really working hard.
Interesting. I wonder if it's like, is it like a shame thing? Like they feel like they're supposed to know how to. I got all this money, of course. I just know what to do with it.
I think part of it is they don't know what they don't know. Right, going back to our original premise. Socrates is back. Yeah. But the reality is they don't know what they don't know, and it can be hard on them mentally. And yes, they do feel like they should know, so they act like they do know, even if they don't.
Interesting. Well, if you want to know what you don't know, go to edgewaterfamilywealth.com and get started on that journey. And Scott and Tammy, they're your financial Sherpas through the mountain that is financial freedom and independence and retirement. Go check it out. edgewaterfamilywealth.com is the website, and we will be back with more It's Only Money next week. See you then. Scott, Tammy,
have a good one.
Peace.
Yeah, and clearly people are rich, right? Or wealthy. You don't have to be rich. I like the term wealthy better. I mean, to rich reminds me of like the Monopoly guy or something. But, you know, they're people, they're regular people.
Now that guy I trust. You
Yeah,
see, the
no.
problem, Scott, you don't have a monocle.
Monocle is, now, if you give me a guy with a monocle, I mean, like, I'm all in.
What was his financial advice? He said buy Park Place?
Where is that?
Where is that? I can't find it.
Tune in to It's Only Money with Scott Brown from Edgewater Family Wealth, Sunday mornings at 7 on Real Radio 104.1. Raymond James Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Edgewater Family Wealth is not a broker-dealer, is independent of RJFS.